Hi everyone, I'm Ramos. Welcome to this week's episode. Today I'm going to share with you my top 5 tips for starting a low-carb diet. Now before I get started, I want to just say that fasting can absolutely work with any diet. So you don't need to eat low carb, you don't have to go make all these dietary changes in order for fasting to work for you. Depending on your diet, you may have to fast more or less to achieve your desired results. But there's a huge growing movement and a lot of support from the medical community for the benefits of a low carb diet, particularly for people looking to lose weight or reverse conditions such as type 2 diabetes, polycystic ovarian syndrome, and fatty liver disease. So we're going to tackle the low-carb diet today, especially since it's been gaining so much popularity and support from people like the president of the American Diabetes Association. So my first tip for getting started with low carb is more about mindset. Shifting your mindset. Stop thinking about what you can't eat and start thinking about what you can eat. When I first started trying to transform my diet when I was a diabetic and looking to lose weight, it became really overwhelming. A lot of the foods that I ate were bread, pasta, and potatoes, and these made up an overwhelming percentage of the foods that I ate. But they were only 3 foods, and I became paralyzed with thoughts like, oh my goodness, what can I eat? What can I eat? Because I can't eat the 3 main staples in my diet, and I didn't really know what to do. You know, I would have a plate of food, there would be a steak, there would be some broccoli, and then there would be this big gap where potatoes used to sit, and it was really overwhelming. And I quickly realized while going grocery shopping that in fact there are a lot of things that I can eat and that I approached the low carb diet with the wrong mindset. So I went home from that grocery trip and I made a whole list of things that I can have for my diet. So all of these things that I didn't eat before, things like eggs and bacon and nut butters, I could embrace these foods and all of these other vegetables. Because I was so regularly eating foods like potatoes and corn and pasta and bread, I was filling up on those foods, and there were so many vegetables out there that I never even tried. So I got to experiment with all these different ways for cooking Brussels sprouts, to which I am the Brussels sprout master now. But Brussels sprouts, broccoli, cauliflower, asparagus, wrapping asparagus in things like bacon and prosciutto. There's so many great ways to consume these foods. Or even bell peppers. You don't just have to slice them up and throw them in the oven to roast them. You can stuff them with ground beef or ground turkey and all different kinds of other vegetables and flavorings to really change them up. You can make little mini pizzas out of slices of eggplant that you grill. You can make zoodles from zucchini with a spiralizer. There's so many great vegetables out there and so many different ways to experiment and cook with them. So I made this huge list and I started going through low-carb cookbooks like Maria Emmerich's cookbook to see what are these options. Like, how do people eat vegetables? I never really thought about it. I knew 9 different ways to prepare a potato, but I never thought of all of the different ways that I could prepare the other vegetables. And once I started to experiment, I actually became overwhelmed with the number of foods and combinations of things that I could make that didn't involve potatoes, pasta, or bread. Now I know that those foods that were my vices aren't your vices, but just like me, there's so many great options out there. From when it comes to animal products, you have poultry, you have meats, you have fish and seafood. I got to really experiment with eating different types of seafood and now I love it. And there's all different kinds of non-starchy vegetables for you to have. And during your eating windows, you can embrace consuming things like nuts and nut butters if your body can tolerate them. Tip number 2, prepare. Preparation is key for success. I know it sounds cliche, but it's so true. If you have time on a Sunday after hitting up the farmer's market or going grocery shopping, then come home, Wash your food immediately, chop it up, and prep it for the week ahead. I think that's really key. If you're really busy like me, I'm usually on the road most weekends talking to different doctors and educating them about how to fast their patients safely. I don't have that time on Sundays. So what I do is I just wake up half an hour earlier. I enjoy some quiet time to myself for a few minutes, and then I prep my food for the day ahead if I'm planning on eating. So that way everything I'm eating is fresh, and it only takes about 5 minutes of my day every eating day. So if you're fasting every other day, then that's only 4 days of the week roughly that you're spending 5 minutes prepping. So it is doable. That extra little bit of time in the morning can make a big difference to the quality of your eating throughout the rest of the day. Also, I can't stress enough about the importance of writing down a meal plan for the week. This is key because not only are you writing down what you're going to have, but it gives you a guideline for when you go to the supermarket or when you're ordering your groceries online, and you need to stick to that guideline. But you also have a plan. You're not just winging it. And I know even still today, if things get out of control and I don't have a chance to plan, winging it never results in having a full meal, or it can lead you to say, oh, to heck with it, I'll just go out and eat, where you're likely to make some poor choices. So writing down a meal plan so you can stick with it and buying the groceries that are just on that list can really help you succeed. My third tip is to prepare a meal plan and stick with it. So this is critical. Plan out what you're going to eat. Don't try to wing it every day. This helps in a couple of ways. When you plan out what you're going to eat, you already have that stuck in your mind. So you're a lot less likely to get to the end of a stressful workday or get to the end after a busy Saturday of running errands and say, oh, I'm just too tired. Let's order in, or let's just go out and maybe make some choices that we'd later regret. If you have a plan written down, science shows that you're much more likely to stick with that plan. But this plan also provides as a guide. It's a grocery shopping list, and you need to stick to that list when you're out at the supermarket or ordering groceries online. Stick to that list. Use it as a guide. Don't deviate from it. Don't buy a whole bunch of extra things because they're on sale or they're looking really good. That way, you just have what you need to make those particular meals that you're planning on making at home. And then when you're in a fasted state, you don't have all of this extra food to tempt you during your fast. Tip number 4. Variety is the spice of life. A lot of people will tell me, oh, but broccoli is so boring. Well, that bread you ate was boring too. It didn't change very often. And they'll come back and they'll say to me, well, I could put butter on it. I could put peanut butter on it. I could toast it. Well, the same is true with broccoli. You can cook it on the stove. You can roast it in the oven. You can broil it in the oven to give it a little bit of char and make it nice and crispy. There's all different things you can do. And you can experiment with different seasonings in your pantry. You can mix it with other vegetables, or you could even cover it with cheese. There's all different ways to cook vegetables. And because they haven't been primarily the main staple in our diet for so many of us, because we've relied on the grains and the starches to really help try to fill us up, it can be troublesome. At first, I thought Brussels sprouts were boring too, but you can cook them with vinegar, you can cook them with bacon. There's all different kinds of ways to add in some really, really good taste. So open up your pantries and start experimenting with those spices and seasonings. Tip number 5, swap out the bread. Instead, substitute it with something like a handful of olives, half a cup of macadamia nuts, or half an avocado. A lot of people feel that their meal just isn't complete until they have that bread, and they really try to fill up on the bread because the other food they're eating is not satiating. Now, when you stick to a low-carb, high healthy fat diet, you are going to become satiated from your meal, but it can still feel weird to not have that extra food at the side. Or perhaps you still have some hormonal signaling that isn't quite right yet, and even though you ate a big plate of food, you're still not feeling quite satiated. Then load up on something that's healthy and fatty. So something like an avocado with olive oil drizzled on it and a sprinkle of salt and pepper can be a great way to finish your meal. Or a handful of olives. And if neither of those are your cup of tea, a nut like macadamia nuts tend to be quite low in carbohydrate, moderate in protein, and very high high in fat. So having half a cup of macadamia nuts can really help seal off that hunger and get you ready to start fasting immediately after your meal. Thank you for watching today's episode. If you have any comments, please leave them below. Make sure to like these videos so you see more of them if you're interested. And don't forget to subscribe and follow our channel. I look forward to seeing you again here next week. Bye everyone, and happy fasting.